Hey guys, welcome to The Strong Young Man. Have you ever stopped to consider why law enforcement punishes bad behaviour but rarely rewards good behaviour? Well, the truth is that consistently rewarding humans for their good behaviour is a completely ineffective method at yielding compliance or improving performance over the long run. Consistently rewarding people to coerce them into compliance or improve performance is worthless at best and destructive at worst. While it can work on animals and small children, it's totally and completely useless at persuading grown adults into compliance. Note that I said consistent rewards. Rewards delivered unpredictably in frequency and in volume is an effective strategy at getting people to perform a desired behaviour, as shown by B.F. Skinner in his pecking pigeon experiment in 1957. On the other hand, rewards delivered predictably are a form of bribery. If you do X, then you get Y. If your objective is to get people to obey an order, then bribing people may be a sensible strategy. But if your objective is to get long-term quality in the workplace, to help students become careful thinkers and self-directed learners, or to support children in developing good values, rewards, unlike punishments, are absolutely useless. Not only are rewards useless, but it's actually been proven in many scenarios to be counterproductive over the long run. At least 70 studies have found that rewards tend to undermine interest in performing a behaviour, and this is one of the most thoroughly replicated findings in the field of social psychology. These studies all attempted to debunk this empirical truth, which was first discovered in the 1960s, but all arrived at the same conclusion. Groups who were consistently rewarded for their effort universally achieved less than comparative groups who were not rewarded. Links to many more of the interesting studies, including the ones shown before, can be found in the description. Some studies have proven that it can work initially, but every single study proves that it doesn't work over the long term, and here are the reasons why. Reason number 1, consistently rewarding people changes the way people do things and the attitude people have towards their work. People will adjust their behaviour in a way that yields the most reward for the minimum amount of work. For example, if I elected to earn money per video I released, I'd rush the video editing process and produce more videos but at a lesser quality, which would be detrimental to you and me both. This is because my main focus is likely to shift from succeeding at the task to succeeding at obtaining the reward, which would reduce the overall quality. Reason number 2, there is a diminishing return for investment associated with rewards. The more rewards are used, the more they seem to be needed, but the less effective they become. For example, rewarding people with a consistent yearly pay increase becomes less effective year on year. Practically speaking, if you were to reward your employee with a $20,000 pay increase from $80,000 to $100,000, that's a 25% increase. For the same employee, at the next salary review, a $20,000 increase takes them from $100,000 to $120,000, which is only a 20% increase. So a larger financial incentive is needed to yield the same value reward in the eyes of your employee. On top of this, consistently rewarding a person with a $20,000 pay rise will mean that they eventually have enough security and they will have a reduced need for the reward. That means that the reward becomes devalued and is less effective at yielding improved performance. Reason number 3, it causes problems when the reward is withdrawn. Any time a reward that a person has been conditioned to expect is withdrawn for whatever reason, it can cause resentment to build up towards the person or the entity who removed the reward. To our evolved human psychology, this is indistinguishable from punishment. This is not just the case when withdrawing the reward, but also to a lesser extent when the reward is less than expected, or when that same reward is less satisfying. Reason number 4, consistently rewarding people hinders individual growth. Older children and adults may view rewards as an attempt to bolster the power of the person issuing them. If you are issuing rewards, you are usually doing so from a position of authority. To the extent that this person believes that you're equals or that they're superior to you, this will come across as condescending and will build resentment. Even between people with established power imbalances such as parent and child or boss and subordinate, consistent rewards train people to mindlessly do the activity that yields the reward, rather than coaching people to develop their intrinsic motivation. Mindlessly doing activities will discourage people from active learning, which means that their growth is never fostered and they will never achieve their full potential. Reason number 5, consistently rewarding people reduces their intrinsic motivation. Rewards can come across as controlling, and people tend to underperform when their autonomy is diminished. All humans have a basic need to feel self-determining. People need to maintain a level of control over their own destiny rather than feeling coerced into doing something. Coercion will strengthen the power of people's resistance. The more intensely a person feels controlled, the more likely they are to lose interest in whatever it is that they're doing. This reduction in motivation is a problem if the person had a high degree of intrinsic motivation to begin with. When we reward people in an attempt to reinforce positive behaviour, we are assuming that this person is not capable of choosing to act in the way that we want of their own free will. To a person with sufficient intrinsic motivation, assuming the contrary can come across as dehumanising. The recipient of the reward may begin to question, if people need to bribe me to get me to do this behaviour, then it must be something that I shouldn't be motivated to do. If this person already has the intrinsic motivation to do the desired behaviour, the extrinsic motivation received from the reward may end up displacing their intrinsic motivation, which could reduce their overall motivation to perform a desired behaviour. This is known as the overjustification effect. For example, upcoming sports stars who have a passion for tennis, practicing and playing for hours and hours of their own free will while young, purely for the love of the game. But the moment they start to get paid as a professional, their extrinsic motivation, their income, displaces their intrinsic motivation, their passion to play the game. If their extrinsic motivation has a lesser driving effect than their intrinsic motivation, then they may very well have a net loss of motivation to play the game. The danger of consistent rewards. The displacement of intrinsic motivation has the potential to cause the most destruction to the people you're providing consistent rewards to. This is because, for the ambitious, intrinsic motivation or self-discipline will always override any form of extrinsic motivation or artificial incentive. The effect this has on children is that employing the use of consistent rewards to reinforce desired behaviour from an early age completely prevents the development of intrinsic motivation and self-discipline. If we raise children only employing rewards, extrinsic motivation, they will never be able to develop their intrinsic motivation, their self-discipline. You are training them to only do something if there is a sufficient reward in it for them, which is not the reality of the real world. As they move through life and the rewards diminish, or they have to work harder for the same value rewards, their extrinsic motivation dissolves and they lose motivation to do anything that they have to do. This will sentence them to a life of mediocrity. The effect this has on your subordinates at work is that displacing intrinsic motivation discourages risk-taking and discourages workers from performing tasks that are more complex. This is because failing to complete a task or risking making a mistake will result in that person not being able to collect their reward. Research has indicated that the bigger the reward, the easier the task we will choose to complete. In the arts, rewarding people consistently and predictably drastically reduces creativity in their art as the artist becomes 100% focused on the reward. The effect this has on society on a mass scale is that it discourages people from challenging the status quo for fear of not being able to collect their rewards. This is just another reason as to why the slave mentality is so pervasive among citizens of Western nations. When we receive a consistent reward for our work, our salary, and we are reliably able to collect this reward, our paycheck, we are less likely to jeopardise this privilege and more likely to remain stuck in a life of mediocrity. The concept discussed in today's episode may seem menial and unimportant to understand, but it can be used to your advantage. Firstly, you need to understand that rewards do have their place. Consistently rewarding people or animals who are dependent on you will not cause the same destruction as consistently rewarding people who are not dependent on you. A small child does need rewards, but as they transition into adolescence, a parent should be reducing the extrinsic factors that motivate them in order to foster the growth of their intrinsic motivation. For all other scenarios, you must deploy your rewards in an unpredictable manner, in frequency and in amount, as detailed in episode 83. The second thing you need to understand is that we humans are loss averse and have high levels of motivation to move away from pain over a reward that would incentivize us to the same degree. This is why the threat of punishment is far more effective at yielding compliance than any promised reward will ever be. You must not feel bad about disciplining people as long as you're using the minimum necessary force as detailed in episode 103. This will enable the people you are disciplining to achieve their best potential. Discipline is fantastic for growth, and disciplining people creates self-disciplined people, and a person's self-discipline is the biggest predictor of future success. The word discipline actually comes from the Latin word disciplina, which means to instruct and impart knowledge. This root also made its way into the English language as the word disciple. You must take this into consideration when attempting to discipline family, friends, and colleagues. Discipline people appropriately by balancing out punishment with intermittent variable rewards to become the ultimate positive influencer of people. The final and most powerful utility of this strategy is to employ it on yourself. If you want to achieve your best potential in the fastest possible time frame, then you must treat yourself in the same way you treat your disciples. Humans operate best when we're on the edge of survival, and rewarding ourselves with luxuries takes away this powerful driving force. Punish, discipline, and force yourself to operate on the edge of survival over the long term to enhance the motivational force from this suffering to thrust yourself out of your mediocre life. At the same time, sparingly place strategic rewards intermittently and variably to break up the periods of suffering and to reinforce your own good behaviour. As you become more successful, you increase the amount of extrinsic motivators that you're exposed to. Financial rewards follow the successful around wherever they go. You must do well to remember this in the context of the overjustification effect and realise that an increase in extrinsic motivators will almost certainly cause a reduction of your intrinsic motivation. Be aware of this as it's happening to counter your tendency to lose your intrinsic motivation. The best way to do this is to cultivate and sustain high levels of intrinsic motivation from an early age. Until you can firmly ingrain this trait into your character, you must do your best to reject, ignore, or delay all extrinsic motivators to reap your destiny. Thanks for watching today's episode. In episode 105, I'll be discussing the dangers of endocrine disruptor exposure. Subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when it drops. Catch you then.